40.
39.
Number 1.
40.
39.
Number 1.
39.
38.
37.
36.
35.
34.
33.
32.
31.
30. 29.
28.
27.
26.
25.
24.
23.
21.
20.
19.
18.
17. 16.
15.
14.
13.
12.
11.
10. 9. 8.
7. 6. 5.
4.
3.5.
3.
2.
1.
Hey, Rocky, you want to see me pull a show out of my hat? Nothing up my sleeve. Presto! Hi, and welcome to the Mouthwash Talk Show, a minty, fresh take on politics. And yes, this is episode 179, 179 weeks we've been doing this show, and we're still here. And as some folks like to say, the fastest growing show on the internet, whatever, that's good. But things are heating up. We're getting one more week closer to the election. And man, we've had debates and we've had all sorts of stuff going on. And you know, we've been talking about a lot of Republicans and a lot of Democrats, but hey, it's time we talk to the Libertarians a little bit. Let's see, you know, this might be an opportunity for them to say, hey, look at us. We're an alternative to do that. So we have Andrew Horning coming on. He's running for the United States Senate. He's running for one of the two spots that we have for our state. And if some of you that are maybe following my political career here, that in the last couple of weeks, it's been very interesting. I'm actually running for the U.S. House in District 7 here in Indianapolis. And I think we both are running into sort of the same sort of juggernaut of the other side. So this will be interesting to have a conversation tonight with Andrew. Hey, got a new thing coming out. So I hope you caught Cassie's show. Actually, it was her and Catherine Callahan have teamed up in Madison County. So watch out. Burning the bridges in Madison County just got some gas thrown on it. And they were talking about some of the shenanigans going on up there with the sheriff and the council and some things going on there. It actually turned out to be a pretty decent interview. You can go back and watch that. It's on the Chateau de Marcel studio page. And I actually put that on Mouthwash since Catherine's on our show. So I put it out there on that as well. You can go back and watch that. The live version kicked off at 8. New thing coming next week. I will be doing a newsletter that's going to drop on 7 o'clock on Tuesdays. And I'm going to pick a topic or a subject, an issue. And if you have a suggestion that you'd like for me to give my opinion on, you will be able to see that. Our first one's going to drop, and it is about the recent Supreme Court ruling on you can arrest people for sleeping in public. So that ought to be interesting. I've got some insight on that and some experience with serving our homeless friends on the street. So that is what is happening. And then, of course, we got the stock market neophytes on Friday. The market is, it's just crazy right now. A lot of people think it's going to crash, and a lot of people think it's going to the moon. And there's probably something in the middle there. So you can watch that. That's noon on Friday. But hey, we're going to do this tonight. We're going to do Mark Small Talk. Haven't seen it, haven't watched it. I just downloaded it, and here it is. And on the other side, we're going to have Andrew Horning, and we're going to discuss small talk a little bit, and then we're going to bring on the panel. And once again, Lucy is sitting this one out. She said, I don't want to take anything away from Andrew. I think she's actually making some potions, and her cauldron is probably overheated or something, and she can't get on. So we'll hope to see her next week for our Lieutenant Governor show. The Democrats, it's their turn to fight it out for lieutenant governor. We're going to have Bobby Kern on and whoever else. We might have Cliff Maglione and this Terry Gooden. We've reached out to him. Said, hey, come on the show. We'll see. And, you know, our warning stands. If you don't come on the show, you don't win. So, hey, Andrew, if we don't get your other opponents on by November, maybe you'll win. So we will play some small talk, and we'll bring Andrew on the other side.
I'm Mark Small. This is Small Talk. The United States Supreme Court issued a decision that turned upside down the concept of the Constitution that all people are equal before the law. We want to look at what the framers meant to do. Federalist 69, Alexander Hamilton recited that the president can be removed from office, charged with bribery, stuff like that. We can also look at the Constitution itself, to the text that states that the president can be removed from office. Not only that, he can face prosecution afterwards. Now, I don't know how much Roberts got paid to write that opinion, but it was despicable. It was despicable that anything was allowed to go forward like that, even be considered by the court. But here's what's most appalling. In all 119 pages that take up the main opinion, the dissents and everything, where is there mention to Micah Beckwith having spoken to God? God spoke to Micah Beckwith and said, that was my hand yesterday in I sent those riots to the Capitol. Beckwith said, well, Small just freaks out when I say God. No. I get very, very angry when somebody says God told them to do things politically, and then they won't debate the matter or subject themselves to any questioning. And then they try to sound like it's divine. God didn't speak to Beckwith. If he did, Beckwith should be up there yelling loud. Wait a second, you can't move ahead on a prosecution of that man. God did that. Beckwith can't because Beckwith lies. Man, the only thing that he's done with more consistency than anything else. Wait a second, he's a lot like Trump. Small talk.
All right, Andrew. So backstage, Brad was guessing what small talk was about, and he said it would have something to do with the Supreme Court, Micah Beckwith, and Victoria Spartz. He was 2 out of 3 on it. So let's just get right to it. Oh, first of all, welcome to the show, Andrew. You've been on before, and introduce yourself to our folks here that may not have heard of you, which I don't know who hadn't heard of you.
Well, sadly, a lot of people haven't heard of me. It's not like I'm a basketball player or something like that where everybody would know me. I've just run for U.S. Senate, governor a couple of times. I wrote for the Indianapolis Star. I had a column in that for a few years. I wrote for Indiana Policy Review Foundation. So I've done a lot of stuff politically for the last 30 years, hosted a lot of and it organized a lot of protests, even one of them with a half-naked lady on a horseback, Lady Godiva protest in downtown Indianapolis. So I've done a lot of things over the years, but all in sort of the same direction of trying to promote freedom, liberty, justice for all, but kind of with the undertone that our government is corrupt. And really, all the issues that we think are issues are really just symptoms of a much greater problem of political corruption. And that's what I've been. That's the drum I've been banging on for 30 years now.
Yeah, and like I said, I've been down to your place down there, and you're down there in God's country. And
although God was pretty mad at us last week, we had a terrific storm come through here. Yeah. We lots of damage in my area. So I've been working with my chainsaw more than my mouth in the last few days. So it's kind of frustrating, but.
Yeah, well, so you had some limbs down and other things. We've been fortunate to dodge a lot of the wind because I have my little corn patch out there, and it doesn't like it when it gets windy. So we've been fortunate this year that you get the stuff and somebody else gets it, but we do not. So tell our viewers, what you're running for, and maybe one of the struggles and one of the high points.
Yeah, I'm running for U.S. Senate. It's an open seat this year because Braun decided to run for governor. Ordinarily, somebody who's an incumbent can stay in that seat until they die or they become effectively dead and they have somebody else work their mouth. So, we have an opportunity this year for all kinds of things. I think this should be a great year for libertarians because I think it's now apparent that, in fact, with all the revelations about COVID and from the Pfizer files and all of this stuff, we should all know that we've been fed a load of hooey for a long time about everything important, about drugs, about the state of our medical and science systems, our information systems, our politics certainly has been out of control. I think we've all known that for a while. But the fact that the lies are now so apparent, and I think it's very helpful that we had that debate that showed pretty conclusively what everybody could already see with their own eyes. And that is that we've got not just a president who's well past his expiration date, but we really have descended into, I mean, look at the candidates we've got this year. They're the same. They were the oldest candidates we've ever had the last time they were running together. And, it's shocking that I guess I also should have to say that our founders predicted this too. If ever we started thinking that we're really a democracy instead of a republic, that we would descend into mob rule that gets stupider and stupider and stupider. And here we are. It's corrupt. It's embarrassing. And then if we think that this is the cream of the crop that we have running for president, it's pretty embarrassing.
The cream is spoiled, and that a lot of folks would say that. So one of the things that we run into, and I'm going to put us both in the same category. I'm running for the U.S. House. You're running for the U.S. Senate. We're definitely underfunded, and that is one of the. I think that is where the main driver. There's an old 1800s saying that money is the mother's milk of politics, and it's not everything, but it's how people get their message out. It's how people.
And that's all wrong. That is so wrong. If we as voters did our jobs, if we were to interview candidates the way we would interview anybody, I mean, if I was going to have somebody help me with a chainsaw, I would want to do a more rigorous examination of their qualifications than we do of our president of the United States. And the fact that we are so lackadaisical about who we vote for and we don't follow the money. That's one of those things that you hear that phrase all the time, and people make almost a joke of it, how corrupt our politicians are. And they know this is a puppet show, and that, they know military industrial complex. They hear all these terms, and they understand, that, they even call candidates sock puppets and so on. And they see what PAC does and all that, but they don't vote like they know that. And so when the rubber really meets the road, we are not voting the way we talk. We're not voting on our best interests. And when it comes to the money in politics, it's easy to see the effects that money has and why we don't put two and two together and actually vote, based on the knowledge that we can plainly see if we just look. It's self-destructive. It's stupid. And that's where, you think about, where does the corruption actually take place? Why is it that Democrats and Republicans do the same things when it comes to spending and debt and war and all of the things that we say we hate the most? And you could see it. It's easy to find if you just look.
Well, it's just very much like the Supreme Court decision of, granting some immunity to a president while he's in office. I mean, we still have the impeachment power, and those aren't stripped. But think about it. It goes for Democrats, Libertarians, anybody that's president. This was an easy deal to make because both parties would like it. Do you think Joe Biden's going to want to get charged for something that he may have done? No. But all the focus is on Trump because
I think that's kind of misunderstood. I think, if you actually read what the court decision was, and if you see that they did not say that he was immune from anything. It's only in official actions, and anything that is not an official action, he's liable for. So, depending on what you're trying to charge him for, look at what they're actually. I mean, I'm not a Trump fan. You guys know I am not a Trump fan.
Well, let's see. You're a libertarian, huh? Okay.
Yes, it's not just that I'm a libertarian. There are a lot of Republicans I like a whole lot more than I like Trump. I do not like Trump. So I'll just get that out. But what they've been doing to Trump is just absolutely third world, banana republic, crazy nonsense. And there isn't any excuse for what they've been doing to Trump, and it's not because of any quality of Trump. It's just that the Democrats are so hotly opposed to him that they are willing to do anything. Well, and in fact, I think a lot of it is to keep under wraps some of their own embarrassments and crimes. So a good part of what they're protecting by attacking Trump is the very stuff that would exonerate him. For instance, the Hunter Biden laptop and, the truth behind what happened on January 6th. So, if people actually start looking into the facts of the matter and to see, what kind of tools and techniques have been used against the January 6th protesters, it's you really kind of. I hate to bring up Hitler this fast, but it's kind of like the Reichstag fire, where you've got, one guy set a fire And then Hitler made this, big Reichstag fire decree, which basically ended German civil rights and they started prosecuting people, rounding up suspects. It's very, very similar to what just happened with January 6th. And you look to see how many times we've done this already with 9/11 or the what was the bombing, Timothy McVeigh.
The Oklahoma City bombing.
Oklahoma City bombing. Look at how those events change the laws so dramatically, where you get all of a sudden, it's not just one event. You've got laws that affect everybody.
Yeah, we get searched at the airport, and we have, they've stiffened up all the federal buildings, and you have to go in with metal. I mean, it really is impeding on our freedom of progress. We have to take all this time, and you think about all the money that's cost us to do the security at the airports and to harden all these places, and some of the freedoms that we lose. And then also, we have, it just seems like we got this safety feeling, but how safe are we really?
But then look at what's going across the border. So, what we do at TSA is far more rigorous than we ever did at the border. And so
it's harder to get on an airplane than it is to get across the border.
Yeah, no kidding. And that's
so. Hey, Andrew, I mean, we're really just having a great conversation here, but I got some panelists here that we want to bring them on. Everybody's like, "Hey, the John and Andrew show here is enough." So I'm going to bring Brad and Tiffany on here. Let's see. Oh, we'll do this way. You guys get to be on the bottom, and we're on the top this time. Okay, how's that? So Tiffany's got her popcorn made. And Lucy's making potions in her cauldron. And Brad, I got to commend you on your prediction of the small talk. You got.
Oh yeah, I almost got like.
Yeah,
I almost got a hat trick on that.
Yeah, he just. It was right there. So Brad, what do you think about that deal with Mark Small? He didn't seem to like Micah Beckwith.
No, he took a left turn. I didn't know how he was going to segue into the Beckwith part. Like, I didn't expect that, really. I thought it was going to be one of the three. That was it. But, yeah, he went with the Supreme Court case, which, that kind of freaks, I think, a lot of people out. I don't know how, are Republicans worried that Biden's going to use it right now?
I don't know I'm personally not worried at all because it's not as big a deal as people are making it. We still have an impeachment process. We still have.
Wait, so can the president not do whatever they want as long as it's within?
Well, official business. If they do official business of the, and I don't know, maybe we got to get into this if he wants to bomb Iran.
Would Nixon have gotten away with it?
There's two kind of realms here. There's the political realm, which is impeachment. And then there's the legal realm if he's doing something outside of the job of president. So that's what the court really laid out, and that there's sort of two different tracks this could take. And as long as what he did was under the power of the presidency and the duty of the presidency and the constitutional role, then he is supposed to be at least relatively immune from prosecution, other than impeachment. So that's the other part. So he's still subject to impeachment. But of course, if he does something like he shoots somebody, that's not what a president is supposed to do, and then he is liable for that.
Yeah. So you go.
That was very well said.
Yeah. Well,
people like a stand your ground state. Yeah.
But what if it's a full moon?
Yeah.
Are all bets off then?
If it's the 4th of July, when the firecrackers are going off, you can't hear the gunshots. That's like Mars Hill. I'm sorry.
And then the other part is that we have a president, former president, already said if he shot somebody in Times Square, he could get away with it. So
yeah, he did.
Yeah, he has a lot of evidence that shows his somewhat treasonous kind of ideas.
Yeah. That if you look to see who's got the preponderance of evidence against him, Biden family has really got there's so much evidence against the Bidens and against the Clintons and against all kinds of presidents before, including the Bushes and so on. So if you're talking about who's guilty of the biggest crimes,
Thomas Franklin.
Oops, but can't we all agree that
Benjamin Franklin,
getting $2 billion from the Saudis for Jared Kushner,
selling,
they all have
selling missile technology to the Chinese. We could go on this forever because all of our presidents are bad. We've not had a good president since
And our
well, you've had
Supreme Court
Grover.
just gave them
Lincoln?
immunity.
George Washington and maybe
Yeah,
Abraham.
we've had. I think Grover Cleveland was a good Democrat, and then we had, of course, Silent Cal. He was my favorite. Of the presidents. So
Calvin Coolidge.
Calvin Coolidge was the last of the really constitutional presidents, and
Okay.
and he was a good guy.
How
But
much has
most-
stuff changed in 100
well,
years?
let's listen to the presidents themselves. When Truman, as soon as we had the FBI, almost started warning us about it, and he talked about how J. Edgar Hoover wanted to take over the whole government, and the Congress was afraid of him. Just after him, Eisenhower warned us, of course, about the military-industrial complex and the scientific technological elite in the same speech. People forget about that part, but that was like the CIA of the day. That was brand new, and we were warned about that. And of course, JFK warned us about it. Right after that, JFK warned us about the CIA. He wanted to, what did he say, tear it into a million pieces and cast it to the wind. And of course, we should have listened when he got killed and the warning stopped.
Yeah,
but the fact is,
in the 60s, if you open your mouth, it was fatal.
yeah, well, we all know that our government's corrupt, right? I mean, and we've known that for a long time. And
They
like
just
we were
allow
talking
us to
about,
keep working and slaving away and giving them our
slaving
money.
away. That's kind of the key phrase. there, I
Andrew,
think.
you're going to have to work in taxation as theft because
Taxation
Lucy's
stuff.
not here. Yeah, I'm just saying it's just a standard procedure. Taxation is theft.
I want to say something.
Yeah. Okay, Tiff.
I was surprised at how angry Mark was with Micah, because it seems like running for lieutenant governor, getting delegates on your side is something that Mark Small would do.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think Mike had represented two key things. One, he wanted to go back to sort of the legit function of having two separate elections, one for the governor and one for the lieutenant governor. And that's really the way it was supposed to be. That's the way the president and vice president of the United States are supposed to be elected. And we haven't done that in like forever. So, we let the president choose the vice president. And that's not what's in the Constitution. And that's not how the Electoral College is supposed to work. And, so if you're looking to see, well, that's one kind of thing where he had a principled stand. I think the other part to it is that the delegates wanted to make it known that they were not a pushover for Braun, and that they had some of their own kind of uppity feelings about the GOP, and that was represented in electing him. And I guess sort of the third thing is, yeah, he's kind of he's a lightning rod character in himself. And I've met him. I've spoken to him a lot of times. He's a very smart guy. He's very well informed. But when anybody talks about I have spoken to God or God has spoken to me, that's bound to raise eyebrows, and then people are going to react to that in ways that you can kind of predict.
Yeah, that is,
Yeah,
some
I think
people-
Micah's-
some people get it, and some people are like, "Oh wow, that's kind of weird." And some
Yeah,
people
I
are like,
know.
"Oh, he talks to me
Yeah,
too."
but he uses it as a shield though. Like he uses it and like a spear. Like he goes on the attack with it, and that's what I think Mark's issue is, that Micah does a lot of things where like he says that he hears God's message and he is doing it,
Well,
in that name. And it is, yeah, like what if it's not in what everybody else is thinking?
I sure wouldn't ever do anything like that because I am not comfortable talking about my faith because people jump to the wrong conclusions whenever, I say anything anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm not a minister, but Micah is. So, I suppose, if you're looking to see who's got the best, I don't want to say he outranks us in terms of, God decree or something like that. It's not like that, but that is more of his usual job description. And
well, what do you mean, no, Brad?
Pastors aren't
Micah
supposed to be of the
closer
cloth.
to God than any of us.
I'm
Like,
sorry.
we're all Micah is not closer to God.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you on
he
that.
was just making that
I'm just
point.
saying that's more of his Sunday. This is more of the way he talks in his other job. So I get it, and I am one of
It's
those
like-
people that
Micah's one of those candidates who gets to be his his Sunday self and his Monday through Friday self, because there are a lot of people who lose their religion in the parking lot on the way home.
Yeah, they'll cuss somebody out on the
After
way out of the
service.
parking lot.
So,
Well, and one of the things that I think is different in this, you could say what you can say about Micah, but if he was praying to win the lieutenant governor with the long odds, I'm thinking that God answered that.
Micah
prayer.
did all the legwork.
money on
Micah
Jesus.
did.
It doesn't. I mean,
Micah-
it doesn't
Micah
matter how
got
it happened.
people
It
signed
happened.
up. But John, Micah got people signed up to become delegates so that they would vote for him.
Oh my God. You can't do that, can you? That's illegal.
No, it isn't illegal. But nobody was doing it. Like,
that's how this system works.
Yeah. Brad, I hate to alarm you, but it sort of helped me out and I didn't do it on purpose, but
no, I'm not saying but I just still want it noted.
So like, I want you to know, like in Carmel, correct me, somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but in Carmel, I think there are like 35 people who filed to be delegates in Carmel, and I think like 8 or 10 spots. So these are highly coveted roles, and I don't think with specificity Micah knew who needed to be there and who didn't, but these roles, there were a lot of people who ran for delegate, a lot of people.
And there was two sides to this. So actually people that voted for these people that had, that were Micah's people. So the people that voted for the delegates are the people, and then they are just their representation at the state convention. So it's not like we all got off the Greyhound bus and we're like, oh wow, what are they doing? Let's go. We don't know that, Tiffany. We can't say that.
Who's running for governor again?
I don't. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting with all that. But hey, we got Andrew Horning here. Let's quit talking about Micah Beckwith.
45 people for 9 spots. See that, Brad?
Micah. Yeah.
So, so Andrew, who is the lieutenant governor choice for the Libertarians?
Oh, well, I am so bad with names that I would have been able to tell you that right off the tip of my tongue. And I was standing right next to her just 2 days ago.
Are you telling me it's somebody memorable?
It is somebody very memorable. It is somebody very memorable.
It's probably Lucy. We just don't know it.
No.
Tiffany, memorable is not always good.
Yeah, sometimes you don't.
If you're running for office, memorable is pretty good.
You got
it. Well, I'm really
the unknown candidate. What's your name? Right in.
It's Tanya Hudson. Tanya Hudson.
Okay, good. We saved our save face there for you, Tanya.
Yeah.
So
I didn't want everybody to think I was going Biden on you. So
that's right. Well, you haven't froze yet, and you've kept your mouth closed most of the time. So.
I think everybody over like 78 dyed their hair black or brown yesterday. Like, oh my God.
That poor man.
Get me out of that demographic.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's face it, Andrew, our political landscape right now is friggin' like a desert with no oasis in sight.
But it shouldn't be. That's what really slays me about this is that we've always had options and we've never taken options. And that the whole point of election day is to fire the bad guys. And, it's supposed to be like our power. I've said this all the time, and it's our power of peaceful revolution. And that we are supposed to be able to just turn over our government and seek new guards for our future security. So, the idea that, mankind are disposed to suffer as long as evils are sufferable. That's Declaration of Independence makes that plain. But, we've been suffering a lot. And even though we haven't been getting shot at like our founding fathers, our tax rates are higher. Inflation is much worse.
The different.
Well, it's a different slate of powers and problems than they had. And our government is vastly bigger. We have a government that is essentially a global empire that is run by a crony network of NGOs, INGOs, corporations, Malthusian eugenicists, psychopaths. It's a mess.
Throw something else in there.
Well, you can throw a bunch of stuff in there. So you think it's just about everybody but the politicians themselves. In fact, I thought it was great when Thomas Massey did, several interviews lately about how he's the only one in the U.S. House of Representatives, and maybe the only one in all of Congress that doesn't have an AIPAC person attached to them. Huh. And so you think about how, John, if you went to D.C., you would get a visit like day one. Somebody from AIPAC would come, knocking on your door, and they would be very friendly, and you would become friends with them because they're very friendly people. And, they would try to wheedle their way into your life in one way or another. They'd be very helpful. They would tell you all kinds of great stuff, good information, and it would be mostly true. And they would ask only very little stuff, about, well, this funding bill, we need a few more missiles for Israel. We need we need you to blow up this country. We need you to take out this dictator.
Wait, when do those questions happen though? Because I feel like that would kind of sour the whole.
Brad, you don't even want to know. Just after I won the caucus to replace, just after I won the caucus to replace Jen Pace, I got a lot of new friends. I got a lot of new friends.
That happened to me when
my winning will do.
It happens immediately, and that's where that is the way the system works right now. And that is what, if you vote for any Democrat or any Republican, even the best ones, you're voting for the system they voluntarily choose to represent. And sorry, John, I mean, anybody, you are not able to fix that. The only people who could fix it, and I'm not able to fix it either. The only people who could fix it are voters, and the only way voters could fix that is by voting for anything but the two-party system, because that would be at least saying one thing. So if you vote for Green Party because you're a socialist, if you vote for Libertarian because you're sensible, constitutional, so on, then what you're really saying is that I am sick to death of this crony network that's really running the planet. And that's the only way you can do that. There isn't another way other than picking up guns to say that. And if we are serious that we think we have problems and we want to fix them, we at least have to vote differently than we've been voting all along.
Yeah, so let's play what if. Let's play the what if game here. I hate playing what ifs, but so say
Do I need a hat for this?
Yeah, not yet, but it's going to be close. So say you win, Andrew, and you go out there and they got these caucuses. Would you be I mean, I would say a lot of libertarians would probably, if they had to choose, they would probably pick a Republican side as opposed to a Democrat side. But would you caucus with somebody, or would you just stay, totally out of that? I mean,
I would make friends. I would make friends with as many people as I could. But when it comes to the important issues of caucuses, choosing leadership and that kind of thing, people ask you that all the time. And I have to say that given the way that, I mean, no offense to any particular Democrats that are standing by here, but I think the Democratic Party in DC has gone a little bit crazy. And they're just not acting rational. And the tribalism on both sides is nuts. But at least I think and it could change on a dime. It could change anytime. But right now, I would be caucusing with the Republicans.
And I mean, you'd be out in the cold otherwise. I mean, you look at who was the guy
they follow exactly what Trump is telling them to do, though.
I don't know if that's necessarily.
You've
had these people called never Trumpers, so I don't know if they're in
Trump
this line.
He was pretty instrumental behind that, that huge funding bill that gave money to everybody on the planet except us. And the TikTok and all of that kind of crazy stuff. Trump was behind that. And Trump was behind big spending. You can't take away the fact that under his administration, we had tremendous debt spending that was responsible for a lot of the inflation that we're feeling now. And that's just the way inflation works.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if you elect a guy that's got a golden toilet, I mean, what are you going to think? I mean, what are you going to get? I mean, it's like,
and he was a Democrat until 10 minutes before he became, the epitome of Republican.
That's it. Like we elected a celebrity. That's what we did.
That's a good analogy. That's a good comment.
Why should you be surprised about that?
Well,
if Oprah, Oprah ran,
that should not be that should not be like their main issue or their main platform is that I'm famous.
But the thing is that as we have this conversation, America is evolving. You do want a brand. When you're a candidate, you have your logo, you have this, you have that. And when it's time to pick the leader of the free world, you want somebody who's got the characteristics that you think the leader of the best nation in the world should have. You don't want somebody meek and humble mumbling in the corner. You want somebody who's going to, bang their fist on the table and say, Brad, you're.
Yeah, no, they're gonna agree with a dictator from Russia about what they said instead of trusting our national security advisors. Yeah, that's the kind of leader we want.
Or somebody who's committed to global peace, or somebody who's able to look some of these world leaders in the eyes, these communists, and say, no, not today, not on my watch. So I
You
think
think that Trump does any of that?
Well, I got it.
Like,
I'm going to.
Trump will do whatever
Brad,
people
you
tell him.
need
I'm going to
cable,
be an
baby.
independent observer and say that, one thing I can say about Trump, if you go back to Trump in 1988 and hear what he was talking about then, it's roughly been the same thing that he's been talking about lately. And it's getting fair deals from other countries. And, we want to do more trade than war. And he thought that, we were making mistakes across the border way back in 1988. So it's not like Trump has really changed from like Democrat, Republican, or whatever. He was always into that stuff.
Yeah.
So I will give credit to Trump where it's due, and that he's been
Didn't he
right
go through
on
a bankruptcy at that point in his life?
He's been
No,
through lots of
he was
bankruptcies.
almost bankrupt, and that Celebrity
and he tried
Apprentice
to
saved
rob
him.
his.
Any businessman,
What
the
are
more you
these,
fail,
like-
the more you succeed.
He tried to rob his own father
Tiffany,
too. So
oh my God.
he's
Stop
not a
being
great
Trump.
guy. But I'm not defending Trump in any kind of way.
You're
All I'm
doing a
just
great job.
all I'm saying is that he's not the worst that we've ever had, and the Democrats are making it sound like he is, and
At
that's
least he's
just not
awake.
right.
At least he's awake, Brad.
Well,
Listen, I'm with you on that. Like, I don't know who scheduled that. Like, that was past like my bedtime. He shouldn't have been up then.
This should have been a lunchtime debate.
It should have
You
been
know,
a lunch
it should
chat.
be like an 11 a.m. like a brunch. Or,
Yeah.
Well,
You
they
know.
say he's operable from 10 until like 2 or something like that.
Yeah, I believe you.
And
Look,
I mean,
get that Trump
I mean,
pharmacy
come-
back in there. They were handing out all the drugs.
I mean,
thought.
I'm like 63, and I don't want no part of that kind of job right there. I'm sorry. It's just this is enough. Running this show's enough for me.
Well, I feel like
But he
I'm
took
of
a
course.
week to prepare.
Well, I'm the oldest guy here, maybe not old enough to run for president, but I'm just looking to see what has happened in my lifetime has been shocking in terms of the change in USA government. But then, my youngest son and I were just talking about, in fact, I'm a little worried. He's getting on a plane to go to Europe just as we speak here.
Did he get his vaccine?
I'm sorry.
Did he get his vaccine?
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah, a whole nother show.
Don't get. This is where we would bring in Lucy. But we were just talking about in his lifetime, what has changed. And he was born, just when the internet was still fairly new and all of this kind of stuff. And I'm just looking at how fast our government has changed in his lifetime, and I thought it was fast in my lifetime. And people think things take time, and yet if you're really looking to see how free I was as a kid, and how the rules of even kids are so much different now, and how the rules of businesses have changed, how the rules of government have changed, how the rules of our courts, and how our feelings about the institutions of newspapers, which are dying, of course. The whole journalism trade now is one of the least respected in the world. And we think of.
But why is it dying though, Andrew? Like, why is journalism?
I can tell you why. I can tell you exactly why. It's because we've had a concentration of power, a centralization of power that's been absurd. I don't know if you've heard of the Trusted News Initiative that was started by the BBC several years ago, kind of under the auspices of the World Economic Forum, that ended up buying up and sort of dictating what people say, how they say it across Google, Disney, so entertainment companies, information companies, search engines, everybody now is on board with that whole misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation regime, where they're the arbiters of truth. They're the ones who effectively are throttling truth and making sure that we're inundated with lies. And we know it's lies now. And so
it's always lies from like a different point of view.
No.
I just mean like talking about like Adam Wren was on here talking about how it's just up to both sides. Like it's or you don't have to be certified to be a journalist. You could be on either side and say whatever you
But
want.
who's
There's no
qualified to
credential that,
certify
like,
anybody?
you-
Who can certify anybody? I mean, I worked in the medical
Yeah, and so-
business, and the fact that we have quack doctors who have medical degrees and all this stuff, you're not going to get around to that. The issue is that they have earned our disrespect, and you know that
all of them, not.
No. There's the reason we have. Look at the media we're on right now. This did not
that's
exist.
a good example of not all of them.
Yeah, so we are alternative media right here today. And so I've got my little podcast that I've done on Rumble. And, you know, the fact that we have new things popping up is because it's demonstrable fact that we've been lied to. And we find these lies out all the time. And it's been happening for a long time. It's not like we didn't know that the second day of the Gulf of Tonkin incident didn't happen and that we went to the Vietnam War for, you know, bogus reasons. So we've been lied to about everything. And then we find out that the CIA actually did do, you know, they were paying journalists to lie with, you know, that was, you know, Operation Mockingbird. So, you know, we find these things out as they become declassified. But look at what we found out recently. We have found out recently that all these people that told us that, oh, anybody who says that, you know, Biden is not as sharp as attack is crazy. He's, you know, he's smarter than all these guys put together. And this was in 2017. His family members were warning people, but what are you guys doing? He should not be running.
That was a hard watch. Yeah. That was
And that's, we've been lied to about Trump. We've been lied to about Biden. We've been lied to about everybody and everything. Our reasons for going into wars is always, I mean, the first, you know, my first book, one of the first words, you know, the first sentences in it is, you know, always and everywhere, you know, the first casualty of war is the truth. And that's it. It's always been the case that we lie to get our way as people and as governments and as whatever. And where there's more power, there's more deceit. And where there's more concentration of power, there's more reason and more, you know, impetus to lie. And they're willing to do more things like kill people to hide the truth. And so we have the biggest, most indebted, most powerful, most armed government that's ever been on this planet. And we've got our fingers in everybody's pie. And we've got our guns in half the nations of the world pointed at the other half. And so, you know, we are a monstrous empire in truth. And when people say we've been a force for good, they're not being honest. We have done horrific things, not like other countries haven't done that too. But, you know, we're not a force for good. And one of the reasons that the BRICS nations have grown so much lately is because at least they do things like build roads and bridges and schools and parks and you know, the Belt and Road Initiative, the Chinese maybe with bad, you know, you can maybe find something bad behind all of this. But the fact is, a lot of people like it. They're making friends and we're making enemies.
Yeah.
So the most unpatriotic thing I've ever heard.
No, if you want to be patriot, I'm a constitutionalist.
It was just funny, like when you, because yeah, like it's coming up on the 4th, and it's just like, yeah, like we, but I feel like liberals have always gotten a black eye for reading, you know, The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, and kind of seeing history through like a certain lens. Like, how is that any different than what you just described? Like,
well, I mean, really, libertarian. To be fair, I call myself I mean, in my book, you know, the Relighting the Torch, I talk about how we redefine the terms liberal and conservative, and really, by my definition, I'm a progressive liberal, and I think that, you know, the liberal name has been twisted around, such that, you know, what.
And then John just said that like most libertarians would skew conservative. Though.
Well, you have to define terms.
Well, no, and I'm just like, because
that's just what
I just want to point out that we're all over the place and it's just chaos. And
it would be under the auspice of less government, you know, less spending, you know, conservative in that nature, right? You know, taxation is theft, those type of
additional family values.
Yeah, in that type of, you know, let people live their lives. That's the type of, you know, unfortunately we have we have some Republicans that don't believe in that. So you know.
Okay.
Well,
But
it does. It comes out if you ask somebody what woke means, they're going to give you all kinds of wonderful things that it's about. And then if you ask, somebody who's anti-woke what woke means, and they're going to say it's all evil nonsense. So the fact
Why
that
is it woke
It's
and
just a
anti-woke?
dumbass slang word that was like
Thinking.
just started.
yeah, way to
That's
go,
why-
Andrew. Way to
Nice
fire up the
people.
panel.
that's why in my book I have a whole chapter on language, because in politics, until you pull out guns and start shooting, it's all words. So what a president does, what a lawmaker does, what a judge does, all of that is words. And it really only takes action when you get to armies and cops. So the fact that that language is so important. Well, marriage vows.
Yeah, once
or
you start
making
being able to
promises
be
or-
arrested, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can even take text messages and actual verbal communication. A text message can be taken out of context. You don't have the inflection, you don't have the meaning, you don't. It doesn't, and it can. I've seen people get really upset about a text message that was harmless, but
I hate texting for that reason, because it's inherently kind of terse. And I usually use voice recognition on my phone, which sometimes makes very amusing, but sometimes, catastrophic result. But
So maybe we need more thesauruses. Maybe.
What's another name for thesaurus?
No,
Tiffany?
we don't need more thesauruses. We need to learn
Well,
what
maybe
the hell
that's
the
what people
words
mean for
actually
that.
mean.
So
Well,
that
what
people can expand other than like LOL.
I don't disagree, but I think what we really need is freedom of speech, and we need to talk to each other, and we need
Yeah,
to
but
listen more.
some people use words they don't understand.
And we
I mean,
need
that's
freedom
what-
of
that's
we need
what-
freedom not to get
Yeah.
angry with somebody else. We
But
need a lot
Tiffany,
more
that's
mercy.
what happens. That's what happens when you use a thesaurus. You just go with that other word without actually knowing what that word.
No,
would mean.
well, if you're going to use a
need
thesaurus,
dictionaries.
it's a collection of words, and you choose the one that matches most what you intend.
Well, I think the best thing to do is for
guessing at that
people to
point.
sit down
We're
and talk.
arguing about a thesaurus, Brad.
Well, this disagreement has turned into an argument.
Look at what we have right here. This is what you got in this show is what I think we need. You've got a Democrat, you've got a Republican, we got two Republicans, you got a Libertarian, and we're talking, and that's a good thing. And so if we could just get more people to talk about politics, those two taboos of talking, no, I don't talk politics or religion. That's a shame, because
That gets us
even
into trouble.
I'm sorry.
That gets us into trouble as a people. It's like when
Eh,
people
it
don't
shouldn't,
talk
though.
about salaries
I mean,
and
Because
stuff. It's
sometimes
like,
the liberals don't know how to think right.
Oh, here we go. This is why we get a fight going on today here.
This is why this has
Did
to
I
be.
just use a word?
Yeah. You should have texted that one. You should have texted that
Yeah,
one. That would've been
exactly.
better.
Have you ever done this show live with all of the panelists together? Or would that result in a fist fight? I don't know.
No, we'd be the
no,
same.
that would be
but we-
hilarious.
I
Well,
don't
the
think
problem
any of us
is
have enough energy for that.
we want to do one. Maybe we'll do show 200 live, but we got to get Lucy up here, and Tiffany's in Fishers, Brad's in Anderson or Alexandria, and
And it's after all of our bedtimes. Could you imagine a 9:00 show?
yeah, we'd have to do
this
it
is
early.
late. This is awful late. This is for us old guys especially. That gets
Well, the thing is,
Just mess
Lucy
up
can
the
hardly
whole
get done with all of her gaggle of kids by 8, and then we used to have Jacob on that was on slow time up by Michigan. So so it's sort of that's how we did it that way, and we never changed it. But the 9 is a little late for me. But hey, guess what? I don't have my spin class at 5 a.m. tomorrow anymore. I quit it last Thursday or a couple Thursdays ago. So I'm not as irritable on Wednesday as I used to be.
That's good.
So, but hey, Andrew, another question. We just talked about the. Hold on a second. Let me add my. I'll get you next, Brad. Just calm down.
That's why I raised my hand.
Okay.
You could.
That's what I do. when I have a
Too.
question.
So I see you giving me finger back there in the back too.
Hey, where's your cat, Brad?
Yeah, it's a cat. It's a cat, Tiffany. The cat doesn't know where it is. So what we just
comes
talked
and goes.
about.
He pleases.
What we just talked about of corruption and people. How much effect do you think that's had on people not voting? Because we're pretty much down to 1 in 5 people vote. At the 1 in 4 people vote. Are they just? It's corrupt. I can't do anything. It doesn't matter. I'm done.
A lot, yeah. I mean,
I can't get off from work. I don't know where my voting location is. I'm not registered. I don't want to vote.
But you think about a holiday, a voter holiday.
there are a lot of people that I'm not too worried about not
Amen.
voting. Like, the people who, are really not interested in, looking up where to go or taking off time from work or whatever, those are not the ones I'm worried about. The ones I'm worried about are the ones who really do their homework and they know things and they're so disgusted by what they know that
Those
they
sound
feel
like
hopeless.
libertarians.
Yeah.
Oh
okay.
boy,
That's fair.
Here we go.
But at least we're disgusted enough that we feel like we have to do something, and so there's that. So, but and so I guess maybe that's where I have so much heart for people who feel hopeless because they feel that the system is so corrupt and so tilted against them that their one vote isn't going to matter, especially if they know that there's corruption and people go to jail for election fraud every election cycle and this stuff has been going on forever and they see it's only getting worse and we might as well just let it all crash and then see what happens afterwards. But see, that kind of thinking is also kind of historically ignorant because it's a lot easier and we have, like I said, we have the power of peaceful revolution that we've never even tried. We keep voting the same way and keep saying, oh, well, it doesn't matter who we elect. How would you even know? Because you've been voting for the same people, the same parties forever. And so because we have not even tried, I believe there is still hope. Now, the fact that a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to pick up my gun and shoot. No, you're not going to shoot anybody if you're not even going to vote different. And if you're,
I don't know.
Yeah, there are people who are going to do shooting and stuff, but they're not the ones. They're generally the ones who are getting paid or getting incited or something by somebody else. And they're ignorant people.
Their parking spot.
There is that, but that's not political stuff. That is like interhuman stupid stuff. Most shootings are like domestic shootings and crazy nonsense. So like discounting all of that, if we're talking about people who are politically upset and they feel hopeless, that is a huge problem. And I wish I knew how to reach those people, but those kind of people are often not going to debates. They don't show up. And that's one of the reasons we don't have as many debates as we used to.
Yeah.
A lot of candidates, especially if they think they're going to win, are going to say, nope, I'm not going to show up at a debate. And then they cancel the debate. And that keeps, that makes things dumber and dumber. And we get worse and worse candidates.
How is that not a law? Like, I've been saying that, like, how is it not a law that they have to participate in a debate and then also have to have like 2 town halls a year?
That's freedom of not
in the county seat of wherever they are.
You would think, but who's going to write that law? That it's not going to be incumbents who are going to write that law.
No, they're the ones that are hiding.
One of those that like, oh, the founding fathers would want us to have that, Like, how would they not want us to have
they
that?
They would want us all to have a wood burning stove too.
Yeah, well, the thing is, so think about it. That's the way they communicate. That's the way they communicated back in those days. They didn't have an internet show. They didn't have
Prairie did not use smoke signals to communicate. Somebody would have to go run to the next farm.
Yeah, there's like, well, Paul, we're here.
Look at what people
lamps, one by
look at what people did do. They would show up by the thousands to hear people speak for 2 hours at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, some of the greatest orators of all time, like Frederick Douglass, and these people that would get up there and just speak to huge groups, and people would travel long distances to hear these. And where is that now? The only time we gather in that kind of numbers for football.
This is what's ruined that. This is what's ruined that. You can talk to anybody anytime on a bunch of different platforms, and it's not as important. Back then, it was so important to go see that because you want to know what's going on, and that's the only way you can find out.
If you couldn't be there, if you knew that if you read in the paper, you get a factual account of what occurred. But Andrew, going back to what you were talking about with angry voters, and they are typically not fully informed, but they're emotional, and they're casting their local vote for with this national impact aspiration where, hey, if you feel this way about DC, why don't you really tell me how you feel about where you live?
Local.
Let's control what we can control. But a lot of people, they come right in and they're voting for something crazy, and they, have no idea what's really going on right in their own backyard, and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna vote straight ticket D, and I'm gonna change the world.
And that's a little bit what I'm struggling with, because I've been concentrating on local stuff, and then here I get thrown into running for a a national position, but it all blends together on what you can do. You could use that federal position to leverage local events with that position. So,
Well, more,
oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Well, more constitutionally, what a federal official should do is get out of the face of local officials, because you think about how much of local policy is determined by federal regulations and federal funding that's got strings attached to it. And so really one of the reasons that I have never really been interested in well, I've never really been able to afford to run for like a local office, just because I would have to quit my job or whatever. But the fact that local offices don't really have nearly as much power as they should. Local government should be far more significant to everyday life than it is, because what we have done is in the centralization of everything, including like the Department of Education and everything else, where we take away the power of school boards, we take away the power of teachers, we take away all local authority and try to concentrate all decision making into higher and higher authorities, like ultimately going to Bill Gates determining that we all have to eat bugs. And that's the kind of stuff that the more concentrated power gets, the more centralized it gets, the less power we have at the local level. So we're going to have to ask the UN to get our driveway fixed or something like that. And that's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, Clarence Thomas, I just read that Clarence Thomas was talking about abolishing OSHA. And you hear people talk about the Department of Education federally. And it's like, well, I see you laughing there, Brad. I mean, but you're not a contractor.
Seriously?
Yeah, no, seriously.
Why?
And because I don't know, I haven't read that part. I just saw that he was.
What is it about regulations that everybody?
Well, I'll tell you what I don't like about.
The whole reason is likely because of accidents and history of this. These are the things that have happened, so these are the guidelines that we're going to put in place. Well, do you guys not see it as that, or do
the theory of regulation is good?
Yeah,
the fact of regulation. The fact of regulation, as opposed to the theory of regulation, is that the regulators get bought by the regulated.
Regulators, mount up.
Well,
all right, Dr. Dre.
What is that? If you've got, look at what's happened with the FDA, for instance. Where does FDA get most of its money for research? From drug companies.
Large pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah. So you think about, how does that actually work on the mind of a regulator, knowing that he's got a tasty job for him when he's got when he's done with his few years gig with the FDA, that he can be working in industry making multi-million-dollar salaries. So the revolving door between the regulators and the regulated is an enormous problem. And that
I think but Andrew, to your point, that's in every profession where there's the opportunity for power.
Yeah, sure.
Malfeasance, screwing the people over, misusing the company credit card. But it all gets down to, in my mind, at the end of the day, is who's got integrity and who doesn't. Let's separate the sheep and the goats to understand who can do what's right in these situations that would cause other men to do something that is best for them and not for the organization that they serve. And it comes down to integrity. Not everybody's got it.
I agree, but if we're talking systems, if we're talking about systems of government where it ultimately comes to, especially in a case where we are voting en masse, the tendency is for people to kind of lose control of that process to the degree that, I wish we had more time to get into the original purpose of the Electoral College, because our founders were really smart in putting this together, and almost nobody understands this. We were supposed to vote for the electors themselves, because the feeling was that we were really not going to pay attention to our presidential candidates, and that we were going to be voting for people based on popularity and that kind of thing. And it'd be much better if we voted for the people who voted for presidents at a local level, where we would know these people, we would, vote for them like we vote for local officials, and theoretically, pay attention to all of this stuff. But it all comes down to humans making good decisions, and we have not been good at that. And so, let's get back to this.
Humans make great decisions when they're regulated.
Well, this is the other part. So if you're saying that regulation is going to fix that, is it going to be humans that are going to be the regulators or not? Because if you're still talking
AI,
we can get
Well,
AI to
in the
do it.
military, they have inspector generals, and places are subject to inspection like once every 2 to 3 years. So there's processes, and then there's regulation. The average person can't live to those kinds of standards.
Well, my biggest.
A congressman is examined every 2 years theoretically, but they get reelected all the time, no matter what. So that we are ultimately responsible for our own governance. There is no alternative to self-governance.
But social media is going to ruin it. I mean, or we'll get to the point where there's certain people, hey, it's great that you can run for office because in the 80s nobody had a cell phone, or in the 90s the cell phones didn't have cameras, and so those are great things. But I think the more that we devolve as a society, there's going to be less and less people who are going to make good, solid candidates unless
who wants to do it?
Evolve together.
Who wants to go through this nightmare of you have to raise money and it's uphill odds? I mean, it's hats off to Andrew for as long as he's done it. I was there 4 or 5 years ago, and his wife was telling him, "You're never going to run for another thing ever." And obviously, he must have something on her because he's here.
Probably would have been a great surveyor. I mean, where do you live?
Yes, surveyor, a great surveyor.
Where do I live?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
he lives in Freedom, Indiana.
Freedom, Indiana. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that next to Liberty?
No, it's no. It's where Spencer, Indiana. Well, we did look in Freetown and Liberty and all of those other places, but no, we live in Freedom, Indiana. It's about 11 miles southwest-ish of Spencer. So
we're Spencer.
If you drew a line between Bloomington and Terre Haute, we're kind of halfway in between.
Oh, okay, well,
in the middle of nowhere. No. So this would Brad. I want to get back to Brad's question about these departments and these these things. The problem with them is they become reactionary and not proactive. And I'll give you an example. OSHA, they do not come out until somebody's dead. The people that are more interested in somebody dying on a construction site or and I'm a contractor, is the owner. They don't want that problem. And the next person's the insurance company. They audit us every year. And so those two entities right there are plenty. We don't need another department or another eyeballs looking over our shoulder because it is too costly for someone to get injured on our job. That is my number one priority on my jobs, is making sure we're safe. And all we need is guidelines. We don't need somebody looking over our shoulder.
Like you have the integrity that I think that we were talking about, though. Like, I feel, that is.
But if you go get people hurt, you're going to be out of business.
Well, just think self-interest too.
Does it take advantage of it?
Just think self-interest.
Oh, yeah, there is. There's sweatshops and there's things. I get it.
It's not that I'm proposing this, but what if, just for example, insurance companies would be the ones that would issue driver's licenses and and plates on cars? They would be in their interest to make sure that you don't crash your car.
Yep.
And that you stay safe, so they don't have to pay any they can collect their money without having to pay anything out. That would be in their self-interest to make you safe. And so their driver's education would be more rigorous, no doubt. They would probably, and in fact, some insurance companies do that, where they put a monitor in your car to make sure that, if you speed.
Yeah, if you drink enough driving times, and that.
So
you get
that's an example of market regulation. And if you think about what branding used to be, it used to be that brand names, before we had the FDA and CMS and all of this other stuff, brand names meant something, and that you could say that this brand name is good, this is a cheap brand name, this brand name might kill you. And so that that there was that gradation of cost and quality that you could count on with brand names, and we've kind of usurped that with regulators.
It's kind of like the difference between a chocolate sandwich cookie and an Oreo.
Yeah, chocolate. It's like, what's the one that what's the generic for Walmart? It's great something great.
Wait, you guys are mad that we brought like the bottom up, right?
Wait, what? No. The free market has done more to bring the bottom up than anything ever has.
Good, right?
No, the regulations historically have been a trademark of a decaying culture. The greater the laws, the more decayed the culture. And so, the more laws you have, the more bureaucrats you have, the less people that you actually have doing things in the real world that matter. And that, you're giving yourself a false sense of security by having all of these regulations that can easily be bought out. And just look at
libertarian, preach it, libertarian.
Well, look at what's happened with Pfizer. I mean, that was the company that still has the record for the biggest criminal fine against any corporation ever. And yet we have trusted them with our lives. And we look at what the Pfizer files have shown about the vaccines.
Yeah.
And
who do they pay the fine to? The people that are supposed to be watching them. It's the same when we had the crash of the market, when they had all those bad loans. The same people that were supposed to be monitoring the bad loans, they got the fines. This system is jacked
and
up.
that whole Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, that created the database for, this theoretically this voluntary database for vaccine injuries. It basically meant that there is no longer any way to really hold vaccine manufacturers accountable for their product. You can't sue them.
Yeah.
And if there are payouts, it's taxpayers that do it. It's not the companies. And so this is an example of regulation in our government. These are regulators that did this. This is lawmakers that did this. So this is big government. It's centralization. It's the theory of regulation facing the reality of regulation, where if you have regulation that's based on voluntary things like the underwriter laboratories for electrical devices and so on, then they've got a financial interest, and they don't have guns to enforce stuff. Once you have government, the voluntary aspect is taken away. You've taken away the payer for the service. You put in a block between who pays for the service and who gets the service, and you've inserted these bureaucrats and regulations. And what ends up happening invariably is that you've got a system that is corrupt and is only going to get bigger and more corrupt. And we can see that in action in our government right now. And this was how our government was supposed to be, decentralized. And it was supposed to be focused on very few things like national defense. But look at what happened to national defense. What was Eisenhower talking about with the military-industrial complex? Look at how that became, instead of being a competitive industry where you have lots of different, suppliers of bombs and missiles and all of that, they intentionally concentrated that by executive fiats over several years. And what that means is we now have only a few corporations that really don't have any competition for contracts, and that they could do just about whatever they want, and they can charge us $800 for a hammer.
That's a good point. Like, because we can't just start making bombs and trying to sell them to the government, right?
Oh yeah, we can. Like, I can get right on the internet right now and make a bomb. Sure, I could.
And you can try to sell it to the government.
But Andrew, going back to the registry and the vaccine, I think registries are interesting because, of course, they're tracking side effects and whatnot. It's almost like they expect to, have some people with some things pop up. So registries are very interesting.
All right. Yeah. Well, hey, let's wind that. I mean, this is a very interesting conversation we've talked about. It's supposed to be an hour show. We're there, which is fine.
Can I ask Andrew an election question?
Oh, you sure can. I'm just winding it up. I'm not killing it off. So hey, wind it up.
Okay. Because, so Andrew, with the lieutenant governor race in Indiana, like Donald Trump endorsed Julie McGuire and it meant nothing. So, like, I kind of feel like Donald Trump has maybe like run his course with like how Jim Banks is, like, right up his butt.
Do you feel that last week?
Yeah, but I mean, people in Indiana still voted against what Trump said. I feel like the grassroots.
Julie McGuire is not a surrogate for Donald Trump.
What? Well,
let's let Andrew answer this question. I'm curious to hear.
What kind of a man would lend his name to products he feels are shoddy?
What we
Surely
don't
not
really,
Donald Trump.
What we don't know is how the dynamic would be if the Democrats had anybody other than Biden as their presidential candidate. So we don't know how effective Trump would have been in terms of endorsing anybody if the Democrats had a much more powerful candidate. So, like if RFK Jr. were the Democrat candidate, that would have changed the whole dynamic of Trump's power over the media, at least.
So Trump's endorsement right now means more, you feel like, than it did.
It depends on where it is. It depends on where it is.
I'll just give you my theory on Trump, and that I think that the Trump phenomenon, because of the way he talks and stuff, I think people believe that he is an anti-establishment character more than he actually is. And I think that, he's surrounded himself with a lot of deep state people over the years, unfortunately. And I had hoped that he was much more anti-establishment than he is. And I know people that know him pretty well and have assured me that, he's not as bad as I think he is. But I can't help but think that the reason Trump has such a phenomenon going on is because people believe that he is going to do what he said the first time he ran for office, and he's going to drain the swamp. And that's where you've got people like RFK Jr., he has proven that he is against the corruption, at least in some areas. So, at least in terms of drugs, the pharmaceutical industry, food, big pharma, big ag, he's been a powerhouse for a long time. And so that's his phenomenon. I think people are hungry for an anti-establishment candidate, or I hope an anti-establishment phenomenon to rise up. And of course, I'm obviously anti-establishment, but it has yet to be seen whether people are going to actually vote the way they talk or vote in their own best interests, because typically speaking, we vote the opposite. We'll say one thing and do another. And good evidence of that was with Donald Rainwater's election last time around, where he was polling up into the 25% range. Oh, wow. But then on election day, people chicken out. And they say, I can't let the Democrat win, or I can't let the Republican win, or whatever the case is. And they end up, and the same thing has happened to me in the past, where I've polled much higher than I've ever gotten in an election. And it's in a three-way race. We don't need 50%, but people still think that you do. And so, I've been told this many times, where people say that, there's no way you're going to get 50%. I don't need to get 50%. And if Donald Rainwater was polling up into like 25%, that is very much in the realm of a three-way race. And that's really what we need. We just need to get to a point where people will see us as a possible alternative when it comes to that phenomenon of throwing dice and I don't want to vote for a loser thing.
Yeah. So all right. So one more question. This one's for you, Andrew, and I'll answer this too. What is the most curious thing you'd like to, if you were elected? What's the curiosity that killed the cat? What is? I'll let you go first, and then I'll answer what's the thing I want to see behind the curtain, sort of thing. What's your most?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I guess when I ran as a Republican in 2004, and I traveled around the country, when I didn't win the election, I won the primary, and I got to talk to a lot of money people, and I traveled to Arizona and Florida, and I was talking to people all over the place, and I think I got a pretty good idea of what was behind the curtain. And that's kind of what confirmed me as a libertarian, because I saw a lot of corruption. I saw how bad it was, and people told me about it. And, I was even told, that, keep your powder dry. We're not going to give you any money this time. But if you do what you're told, we like you, you might be a rising star. And that kind of thing it turned my stomach. And, I guess when it comes to what I'm most curious about in DC, I think I know where the best restaurants are already. I don't know.
On the food selection.
I guess my curiosity is actually, I want to make friends there. I want to know who I can make friends with. And I guess if I'm probing my mind now, because I've not been asked this question before, I guess my biggest curiosity is how many politicians really want somebody like me to get elected to have cover to do the right thing. So in other words, if I got elected, how many people would be breathing a sigh of relief to say, this is a phenomenon. Voters said something. I want to get behind this. I want to turn against all of this corruption nonsense myself. And so, probably the first people I would want to have lunch with, I mean, certainly one of the first guy I'd want to talk to is Thomas Massey, because he has already proven that he is, at least against some of the key corruption that's going on in DC. And while I think there's a lot of stuff that Rand Paul has missed, I would also want it to certainly, tap his brain and see what he knows that he hasn't been going after. Because from what I think I know about the Fauci and the coronavirus thing, I believe, and I'm not going to talk about my conspiracy theories, because I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that Rand Paul is holding back. And I would like to know what he's holding back on. So I suppose my biggest curiosity is, how many of these guys would want to join up with me? How many of these people are holding back already and would find a breath of fresh air in voters finally saying, we're done with this, we're moving on to something else?
Yep. Well, and that's a little bit my biggest curiosity is like actually being able to look at national security items and what condition of our, we have bricks that are, I just want to see what's really going on.
So you want
Ukraine,
to fire a tank?
and I want to see what's going on in these places. And, I want to see what's really going on. What is behind the curtain?
I think that not to spoil anything, I think some of that's on a need to know basis. So
I need to know, and so I guess my curiosity is, am I going to be able to see some of that stuff? So not
if it's not germane to what you're doing. I mean, like you think they're just going to open the archives and like, well, this is Abraham Lincoln's hat and the bullet came in at this angle. What, you think they got stuff like that?
Yeah, I hope so. I don't know.
I'm
talking about
take you to where they've got the UFOs.
I want to know what's really going on. I want to meet these people that and I want to look them in the eye, use my psychology, and find out what makes this thing tick. I want to see what
you want to know works. What level of opioids and antidepressants are just expected to be, are regulated to be in our water.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, there's 435 people in there, and Andrew, there's only 100 people in your deal. That's a concentrated group of people from our country that are supposed to be the best and brightest lawmakers and all this. And I think I'm going to be surprised. I'm with you, Tim. I think I'm going to be surprised about that. That's probably going to be my biggest surprise if something were to happen. I don't
think it's a competition of the best and the brightest. It's not like the Harvard-Yale debate.
Yeah, well, and that's not even what it used to be.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's like we could all
elected representatives who are expected to act on behalf of their constituents.
Yeah, it's
that sounds lovely.
Sometime we need to talk about the secret thing too, though, because just the idea that we have all of these, so much is secret, and yet voters are expected to vote on what information exactly. How much are we being, told that is not true? What are we not being told?
We're asking some of these people who, like in high school, wouldn't look at the back of the book for the answer. And we expect them to go on some great Google search.
That is my argument for Trump. Would you ever
and find information about a collection of candidates? That's asking the average person a lot.
Well, there isn't any way around this. People are voting, and if they're voting on stuff that's not true, and if they're voting on incomplete information, then how can we even judge how smart the average person is based on their votes? Because
you think it's the misinformation wars. I've got to misinform you as much as the next person does. I need to do it faster and better.
No, you don't.
For a
Tiffany,
longer period of time.
Game.
It's
oh my God.
What? Brad, I feel like you're angry that the world is turning, man. Like, don't hate the player, hate the game. You're mad at pimps and prostitutes. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
I was waiting for you to say that.
Well, I want to change the game. And so I'm with Brad on this.
Exactly.
I really want to change the game. And that's where, I think anybody who would vote for me is probably thinking the same thing.
Well,
And
Andrew, okay, like you're going to change the world. I know you can. How much is this campaign going to cost? How much have you raised? What does your statewide network look like?
See all of those
cats.
Oh my gosh, what? Am I Debbie Downer, Brad?
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, let's talk about how much money everybody says that money's really tight right now. Yet every single political race, like the candidates have millions of dollars.
People who have beer and cigarettes are not experiencing any type of financial crisis.
Let's talk about the financial crisis of campaigns as a generality. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, not just in the campaign funds that are raised, but look at how much people get paid, to do nothing except what's related to campaigns. Yard sign manufacturers, people who make, billboards, all of that stuff.
Huge.
Look at how many billions and billions of dollars are spent every election cycle, not just by the candidates, but by all of the hangers-on too. So you've got so many people that do nothing but travel between one candidate or another. As a libertarian, I get people calling me from Texas and so on, saying that, I would like to, consult on your campaign. And I tell them I've only got $5, and then they hang up. But the point is, these people make their living, going from one candidate to another. And why is that even a living?
Yeah. Sorry, I cannot believe how stupid this whole industry
well, it's like Uncle Buck when his horse fixer's in town. I gotta go get.
It doesn't work.
It is very interesting.
It's like the first girl in the beauty pageant who put on some lipstick and some lashes. They were like, "What? That's not fair." I mean, you gotta win if you're not in it to win.
Oh my God, that's
maybe if I had lipstick and lashes, I got a chance.
That was the best explanation of it.
That actually was pretty. That is exactly
you
right.
haven't thought of this yet, and here you go.
Boom! You're going out there with your bloomers on, but I cut my bloomers in half. I have a top and a bottom. I mean, it's man and woman's inherent need to win. Like if we're going to fold towels, I'm going to fold towels fastest. But when it's time to put them away, I'm going to let you win.
See, that's just it. There was a time when candidates were not expected to campaign for themselves. They had other people do it because it was considered, kind of icky for people to sort of promote themselves and be, like the and it was
like a carnival worker about themselves.
So what do you think? This would help us.
If you were at a party, oh God, it would be horrible.
How about we make PACs, Slick Witty, who's running for District 97 coming up, and PACs and lobbyists illegal. That would,
who's going to do that though? Is not going to be incumbents again. So we have to
get the money. Eh?
So you're not going to get term limits. You're not going to get anything you want out of politics unless you vote these people out. So nothing's going to change.
What about states that have the ballot referendums, like Ohio? Didn't they do that last year?
Uh,
but even that is,
I think would they be able to do that? Like,
I think you could do a referendum if their state allows that for probably anything. But in Indiana, it's really tricky. Ohio may be a little easier.
Yeah, surprisingly, we don't have a lot of avenues for checks and balances. It feels like.
Well, Andrew's saying vote the bums out. That's what his check and balance is.
We have all the power.
Don't throw regulations.
We have all the power because, if we stop complying, if we stop voting for these people, we win. Yeah. But that's just it.
This is what we'll start. We'll start it on this show. Nobody shows up to vote for anybody. So everybody has 0 votes.
then somebody shows up and they're like, "Ooh, better cast."
I got one vote. Yeah, there'll be one traitor in the bunch.
It's the girl with the lipstick again.
If nobody shows up, then you're just like a country that doesn't have elections, and the people who already have power keep it.
I'd give it a shot, but all right. Well, that's going to do it for the show.
Well, Andrew didn't answer my question about fundraising.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was your question?
He said he had $5.
How much have you raised, and how much do you need?
I got 100 today. I got 100.
Oh, God, that is I have not even yet. I was just talking to my campaign treasurer today. We are only now at the $5,000 threshold where we have to file an FEC report. So that's how depressing it is. So in terms of how much do I need, it depends. Everything that I am all about depends on voters having an epiphany. And if they have an epiphany, then the election doesn't have to cost anything. But if they don't, then it has to cost $1 million. And that's the way it is. So if voters wake up and they start paying attention and they take accountability for their country, then I win. If they don't,
if they start paying attention,
Against
how
Jim Banks, right?
Huh?
My question, Brad. My question. So
Yes.
wait a minute.
Go ahead.
If they have an epiphany and they're going to vote for you, how are they going to find out about you?
well, they'd have to look. They'd have to be saying, "I'm not taking these options. Are there any others?"
Have
And
to watch
if
the
they do
mouthwash.
that, well, I'm going to be there. It looks like there's going to be a debate. At least one debate. The League of Women's Voters actually asked for the name of my campaign manager, and I gave it to him, and we'll see what happens with that. So if there's a debate, and I'm hoping there will be at least a couple of debates. There used to always be at least two, and there are going to be some public, events. I've been to lots of public events already, and there have been, a few. I've been on a few podcasts. I've been on, been going to state fairs and all that kind of stuff. So I'm out there meeting people. And I've not yet had anybody tell me buzz off. I'm getting positive reactions when I talk to people, but that's, only one at a time so far. And the media has not been terribly cooperative.
Are you using any type of social media or?
Yeah,
he's out there. I mean, on
I'm out
Twitter
there,
and
but,
stuff. I think that's how I invited him on, with maybe Twitter. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm out there. It's not that I'm easy to find if anybody's looking, and if anybody looks to see who the candidates for U.S. Senate are in Indiana, they find me. So if they're looking, they will find me. Now,
shouldn't that be like a basic?
Shouldn't
that be a basic requirement of like a voter, that they see who all the candidates are?
Yeah.
It would be nice, but
okay, that's fine. Let's regulate that. Where are they going to get it from? Are we going to email it to them? Are we going to print it in the paper? Is it going to be on social media? Are we going to put it up on the wall at the county courthouse and expect people to come by and
milk
see it?
cartons? We'll put it on milk cartons.
I mean, well, I drink soy milk, so I mean, like, how are people going to get this information? So that's the thing. That's the thing. Is that like how?
When we get our
Indian
every year, we have to get our new star driver's licenses. We should just make it then. Okay, like that's it.
So once every 8 years, when I need a new picture for my driver's license, I'm gonna what? Have to get informed to vote. Oh, that's
Tiffany, how old is your picture on your driver's license?
I have another suggestion.
I have another new one this year. It was like 8 years old.
If we're talking about regulations that won't happen, how about we do this? How about we take off all of the party labels off of the ballot, off the voting machines, and you have just names and you have just offices, and you have to match them correctly. So if you say
I can make the crossings, and
all of a sudden that's illegal. You can't test people.
Yeah, you can't do that to the Republicans.
That ballot is a test.
You can't do that.
Democrats, you guys care about that, Brad. That's a you thing. I set that up for you.
It isn't a test. They won't even know if they fail. They won't even know if they fail. So the point is, it's if they choose incorrectly, if they say Andy Horning for governor, well, that doesn't count because I'm not running for governor. So, if they,
but some people just pull, they just start looking for your
you see what he's saying,
like, oh my gosh, I voted.
It's just mix and match.
No,
I want
Andrew. No, you
for
can't
Senate.
do that.
I'm going to drop Andy's name over there for whatever. So in that way, people would have to at least know
study a
who's
little
running for
bit.
what.
Yeah, they have. So you could actually go vote and not vote for anybody because you got them all wrong.
Right?
Like, wow. I mean, that's
horrible.
probably good. That's probably a good thing.
Well, right before you give them the test, I guess you have to charge them $1. Is that what we're gonna do?
No,
we'll give them $1. How about that?
Charge them a tax.
Yeah. All right.
No,
all right, people.
I see where you're going with that, but this is not like that. And it's not like the tests they actually used to give to people either. It's just in the voting itself, it used to be much harder than it is today. And so even when they didn't have voting tests and they didn't have poll taxes, or even when they did have poll taxes and all of that stuff, at least they had to know enough to fill out a paper ballot that was, not even pre-printed. They would often just have to write down who they wanted for each office, and that was that, and that would get counted. So if you're looking to see, is that a test?
I feel like that's a real easy way for a formerly disenfranchised person to vote. I mean, like write their names down. I mean, like people have been
I think we can solve this. We could solve this whole thing right now with the magic 8-ball. That is what we need to do. Let's just do it right now. Let's see. Let's just do it. Will Joe Biden be the next president?
Uh-oh.
My sources say no.
Oh.
There you
Well,
go.
there's good
So
news.
there's one out. And let's see. Will Donald Trump be the next president?
Andrew, are you guys running somebody?
It is certain.
Yeah, we are.
The 8-ball has decided. I don't know who the Libertarian candidate is, but they're not. Well, let's see. What does the Libertarian candidate matter? How about that for a next question?
Yeah, he's not
my
gonna
answer
do
is
well.
no. I'll tell you what, this 8-ball's on fire. We need to send it to the Washington, and it is, fairly accurate. I'm thinking.
So that's the worst 8-ball I've ever
moving
seen.
his eyes and his mouth around. He's casting a spell. You're doing your witchcraft, aren't you?
Well, Lucy's got to counterspell it.
That's what. Yeah, Lucy's.
She's down there making something up out of
She's got her
lion's
cauldron
quarters or
going.
something.
Candles and cheese.
Yeah. So yeah, she.
Then
saw
she's
that.
putting the cheese in the wax.
All right, that's enough. We've gone. We've held Andrew here for an hour and 30 minutes, and it's been very interesting.
You make it sound like it's against his will and he's under duress.
Well, blink if you.
I'll do-
Good luck though. Like
Yeah,
I don't
thank you.
like Jim Banks at all. So really, please, just
I appreciate that.
keep pointing
Thank you.
out how horrible he is, and like
It's really not my job to point out how horrible he is. I mean, his
I
voting
know.
record to me speaks for itself. But
But I feel like we're at a point where we're like, yeah, the sky is blue. We have to say this out loud so that people actually believe it.
oh, I'm gonna. If I get the chance, in a debate to point out what I think is going on and why things are going on and who is responsible for it, I will do that. I intend to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, but also the full truth. And I think that's really all I can
Andrew,
do.
would you be disappointed if they had a financial threshold to get on stage?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because he's only got $5,000. Tiffany.
No.
It's not just that. I understand your
had
question.
opportunity to fundraise.
Because is that how we should really be doing this? If we really think that the problem in politics is the influence of money in politics, should we encourage more of the same? Should we
But I do
say
think
that?
it says something about how serious you are as a candidate.
No, it does not. It says who's funding you, and all of that money
Capitalism,
comes with.
But even, I mean, like
not even capitalism.
Even if 1,000 people gave you $1, I mean, that says something. I mean, by having people invest financially in your campaign, you're showing that that's interest. I think that if I give you money, I'm more likely to vote for you than me coming out of a poll.
I got a check
lying to
today.
a pollster. And so I think that like raising money is not necessarily a bad thing.
It isn't a bad thing.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
it is.
let me just point out. Let me just make that plain. The Libertarian Party is not. We're legally disadvantaged, unconstitutionally compared to Democrats and Republicans. We're not allowed to have precinct committeemen. We're not allowed to have a lot of these things. So we have lots of thresholds that we
But you're not willing to. You're not willing to.
Let me finish.
And you want to be on the platform. You want the national.
Let me finish.
You want the light on you, but you're not.
Let me finish.
Let him finish, Tiffany.
I'm sorry.
So our party is pretty small. We don't have, we're not able to get all of the connections to the evil empire that the Democrats and Republicans have. And so we not only don't have all that corruption money, but we're trying to focus on Donald Rainwater because he did very well last time around. And so the party is really concentrated. And frankly, Donald's a much better fundraiser than I am anyway. So he just got $100,000 now. So he's, he just beat the $100,000 threshold that they had tried to impose, or that there was at least a rumor that they were going to impose against him to keep him out of the debates. Now they may do that to me too, and if they do that, then I'm going to lose because the party worked. Everybody's been working very hard to make sure that Donald Rainwater gets in those debates, and he should get into those debates.
Well, I think everybody that's on the ballot should get on the debates. There should not be
yes,
any
they
of those
should.
things. One of the things. Let me do.
It's hard enough to get on the ballot.
Yeah, let me do a clarification of the difference. So those other two parties are major parties, and you're considered a minor party. And the reason is because of the Secretary of State vote. If you could win Secretary of State and win some of these events, if say Donald Rainwater wins, then you guys could eventually be a major party, and then you would have access to the funds and the tax money to do your primaries and all that. I think we should regress back to everyone should do it at the, look how much fun we had at the state convention picking our lieutenant governor. It should be that way for everybody. We have voters.
That could have been a bloodbath, John, and you know it.
Well, hey, the Democrats are coming up, and it's going to be very similar. So,
well, we didn't have political primaries until the 1970s. They had them early on in the early part of the century, and that was considered a ghastly thing to do, and they stopped it. And then we didn't get them again until the 1970s. So, political primaries are new. And since the 1970s, they have increased the threshold for getting onto the ballot for other parties many times, and sometimes doubling the number of signatures required to get onto the ballot. And then in terms of, what we can't be on the election commission, we can't be on the recount, we can't be on any of those election-related commissions. So we are politically disadvantaged to the point where we're not even allowed to raise as much money because we don't have primaries. We don't have the reset. You can get so much per election. You can get like $2,500 from any individual donor for both the primary and the general election, but we're not allowed to be in the primaries. So, just looking at the total amount of money we're even allowed to raise, it's a horrific screw up. Plus, we're not allowed to get, the political ad rates, that they get during the primaries, because they say, well, you're not in the primaries. That actually happened to me this year. We have so many disadvantages.
You're muted, Tiff.
I understand about the loopholes and the disadvantages, but I think that at the end of the day, there's a cost of running an effective campaign. I mean, it's like, well, I don't plan to mail anything to anybody. I don't plan to do text messages. I'm not going to.
I plan to do all of that.
But you're already behind the 8 ball.
Because I think that candidates, if you're not going to run an effective campaign and you're not going to have any good tactics that are going to reach the voters, then I feel like you're asking people to give you your vote, but you're also asking them to waste their vote because you're not doing the things to be a viable candidate.
We're talking about two entirely different things.
That's one of the things that's important, that I feel like people should be able to know that they're voting for somebody who is fully invested and is trying to get their message to as many people as possible.
Well, would you rather
that's a sad thing to say about the values of people, though?
Yes. Would you rather have a good politician or a good marketer?
Well, that's a good politician if he doesn't get elected.
No, that's not how this should work.
There's like a
Elections
are
not about candidates. Elections are not about candidates. They're about
It's
voters.
about advancing ideas.
No, it's really about voters. Because if
you can't do that if you don't get elected.
We have no ideas in the Democratic and Republican parties.
I mean, definitely your values are different than mine.
We're just arguing.
I mean, certainly.
Whose ideology? Wait. This is important. Whose ideology is represented in Washington, D.C. right now? Nobody.
Not the Libertarians, but I'm saying that if you get elected, you're going to represent your party and your values, correct?
I would. But here's the thing. Right now, because of the way this is all related to money, and because of the fact that it's not the candidates who are running the government, but the people who funded them to get there, nobody's ideology, nobody's ideas are represented in Washington, D.C., except the military-industrial complex, except the big information networks, except all of the NGOs.
Okay, now why do you want to go then?
Because I want to change that. Because if I got elected, the reason I got elected, I won a primary as a Republican. Not so hard to do. It was actually fairly easy, much easier than trying to raise money as a Libertarian. And in fact, I raised less money when I ran as a Republican than I have as a Libertarian. So the fact is, this has nothing really to do with money. It's all about voters. And if voters were serious, then they would be looking at all candidates and saying, listen, I am sick of this system of money and corruption that is represented by the Democratic and Republican parties. And in fact, anybody who runs as a Democratic and Republican party is voluntarily choosing to represent that system.
But my question is, how are you going to get your message to the people? That's all. If you tell me you've got this statewide social media, Facebooky campaign thing, then I'd be like, I'm fine with it. All I want to know is, how are you going to get your message to the people and without money? That's my question.
Well, I wish I had money. I've written books.
No.
That's
but you don't have money. You're not actively fundraising. How are you?
I am actively fundraising. I am trying to. So here's the problem: when you're a libertarian, and I did this many times, where I send out fundraising letters, and I end up spending more on stamps than I get back in funds, and I have not yet started phone banking and things like that. But when you've got a party that I voluntarily have chosen to run as a libertarian, their priorities are elsewhere. And in fact, they've always tried to say that, we start from the bottom up, which I think is actually a mistake. I think politics is inherently top down, and that, you get the best bang for your buck if you concentrate on the top, which is what they're also doing with Donald Rainwater. So I'm not I'm neither sort of they want to go for like the winnable races that they can go door to door. They can do a bunch of door knocking and the physical work, and get people elected to local offices. And we have 30 libertarian, well, actually 33, 32, 30, I think it's 33 libertarians in office in Indiana right now. Nobody knows it. And that's why I think going from the bottom up is kind of a problem. But, the fact that we have been winning is something that most people don't know. The fact that Donald Rainwater did very well in the last election is something that almost everybody knows. So, I'm kind of in
down ballot. You're depending on the down ballot. Okay, so we are going to end it. We are going to end the show now, but I want to end this on note. This is the best. This is the best viewer we have tonight on the show. I'm just going to put this up, and you guys can just judge it for yourself. You can see that I'm going to take that unsolicited comment right there. So, but if I wouldn't have put that comment up about my integrity, you might have believed it. So, and if it was a humble contest, I'd be number one. so there you go. Andrew, thanks for coming on. We seem to have another one, and I just want to invite the other candidates to be on, because that's what we have to do legally. And I did have to add at the end of our show here that paid for by the Schmitz for Indiana, because I don't want them coming for me on the thing. So although it's not anything to do with my campaign, I'm the host on this show, but you just got to follow the rules, right, Tiffany?
Those rules.
Follow the rules. And Slick Witty said, "Why run for office if you aren't rich?" I mean, there are plenty of rich people who you don't have to be rich to run for office. You just have to be able to get the resources that you need to be successful.
That's
how you
a combination.
Not just cash. A lot of campaigns are in kinds.
It's a combination of
Brad. You and I need to talk sometime. I think we have more in common than you might think.
Oh yeah, I think so too. It's a combination of a Prince song and a Rolling Stone song. You don't always get what you want, but what was the other part about
doves
Prince?
cry?
But doves cry.
You get what you need. Yeah.
But something like that. Anyway,
Yeah.
It's late, and I don't know where my kids are. So they're millennials. Who knows where they are? But all right, folks, that was a great show. Oh, next week we have lieutenant governors for the Democrats coming on. We got at least Bob Kern coming on. We'll see if the other two come on. And then
is he the one that loves Micah?
Oh yeah.
He was on with us last week.
Save it for next week.
Oh God.
Save it for next week. So
Tiffany,
you remember him?
Shut up. Okay.
On that note, Andrew, stay around on the backside. So we decompress after this.
Wait, no conspiracy. Can I say something? Share something I learned today.
What's that?
That I learned it. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory, but it's kind of more like one of those things that people say that's not true. That Michael Jackson faked his own death, and that he comes around in disguises, and he was this guy named Dave. And I don't know if Dave is still alive or dead. Oh my God, I saw TikTok. Absolutely amazing.
You just sounded like Biden right then. I don't know what you said, and you don't know what I said.
This is why TikTok needs to be banned.
Dave.
I thought he was going to be coming back as an Elvis impersonator or something like that. But
Elvis is still alive. I saw him in Burger King.
He's impressive.
He was so. All right, people.
All right.
Peace
Thank
out.
you.
Thanks, Andrew. We'll see y'all next time.